More and more people are waking up and starting to realize that being born and raised in the United States means that we are indoctrinated with specific beliefs that are simply false. In this video, I'm sharing with you 3 specific myths that I no longer believe after living 5 years abroad. The first myth that I no longer believe after living abroad is that the American dream can only be pursued and accomplished inside the United States. And if you don't live in the United States, you're not really considered successful. Well, after living abroad for the past 5 years, it's become abundantly clear that that is a myth. Not only is the gap between the rich and the poor in the United States larger than it's ever been, which means that most people in the United States aren't actually accomplishing the American dream. Each year, we see more and more people who are actually hustling to achieve this elusive American dream, being rushed to the hospital due to a heart attack or high blood pressure caused by overworking themselves, or even worse, being rushed to jail or prison because they had to commit some big fraud in order to try to keep up with the Joneses. Or even worse than that, being rushed to the graveyard because they were convinced that money was more important than their physical, mental, and psychological health. And some people have even been convinced that a U-Haul full of all of their expensive things will accompany them as they make their way to the graveyard. Now, let's just talk about the fact that so many people from the USA have moved to other countries only to discover that their dollar goes further, their mental and physical health significantly improves, and they finally have time to have a social life, whether it be romantic or platonic, ultimately increasing their life expectancy over time. One thing that I have discovered living abroad for the past 5 years is that it is much easier to save money when your cost of living is significantly lower and you're not forced to compete with all of the multimillionaires on your block who are working day in and day out just to be able to outdo their neighbor. The second really big American myth that I no longer believe after living for the past 5 years abroad is that we do everything better in the United States, whether it be education, healthcare, safety. In the United States, we are often taught in schools that since America is the best country in the world, we only need to finish college, get a job, and everything will be perfect from then on out. What could go wrong, right? What I have learned from living abroad is that there are a lot of things that the United States gets right, but there are a lot of things that the United States gets wrong, and we are still struggling as a nation to find a balance between what we get right and what we get wrong. While living in Latin America, I learned that there are so many system level things that function better here than in the United States. One of the biggest examples has to do with the healthcare system, which in many cases is more affordable, more efficient, and more easily accessible than in the United States. So you will find that even the best doctors, for example, in Mexico, make house calls, and you're not going to receive a bill for $5,000 in the mail after a quick emergency room visit. It might sound extreme, but this is a big deal and it happens very often in the United States. In addition, your insurance company won't hire a team of lawyers to make sure that they don't have to pay for your life-saving surgeries. For example, a lot of Americans travel to Mexico, to Colombia, to Peru to have medical procedures they could never afford in the United States. So there is an obvious need for healthcare reform in the United States, and so many people have been begging for reform for many, many years. I mean, let's face it, even the cost of medication and the ease of access to medication is better in most Latin American countries, especially Peru, Mexico, and Colombia. The third big American myth that I no longer believe after living for 5 years abroad is that financial capital is much more important than social capital. Another way to say this is that money is more important than people, so all you need to do is pursue money, even if it means that your relationships with people go to crap. Newsflash, this is not true. Living outside the United States has helped me to realize that having more money is not the end-all be-all for any type of success. In fact, one of the most rewarding aspects of living here in Latin America has been taking my time and getting to know people. It is well known that things in Latin America move a bit slower, And there isn't this constant pressure to always be on time, to always rush and get things done. When I started to value people and relationships over money, all of the relationships, including my relationships in the United States, improved. Here in Latin America, you learn to value your time with family, with friends, and especially with husbands and wives who haven't felt seen in many cases for many years because you've been working yourself to death. Sometimes you don't need to move to another country to realize these things, but in many cases, you absolutely do. And when you finally realize it, all of the myths about the power of financial capital actually melt away. Living in Latin America for me has been an invitation to authentically connect and prioritize people, especially the people who matter most in my life. Anyway, that's all of the myths that I wanted to share. If you've ever lived abroad or just traveled abroad and you have some myths that you want to share, please don't hesitate to drop down in the comments and share those myths with us. And I'll see you next week in my next video.